Hi, this is Dan Runcie, founder of Trapital, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, your place for weekly insights on the new music business with Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Chris Castle from Music Technology Policy joins us with his latest op-ed entitled Spotify's Updated Terms of Use. Your data is their new oil.
And from Murray Stassen at Music Business Worldwide, downtown music boss speaks out on UMG deal. The debate must be honest. It must be about facts, not agendas.
And from Elizabeth Diltz Marshall over at Billboard, a new white paper from industry veteran Charles Goldstuck entitled The Music Industry Must Work with AI Companies rather than fight them in court. Well, we have got so much to talk about today, Jay. It is episode 266, and we're going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
So very good to see you, Jay.
Good to see you. A lot of stuff going on this week. The Trapital Summit is back. It's this Wednesday, September 10th, and that's 9 a.m. to 5:30. This is going to be a good one. Founder Dan Runcie has put together a world-class lineup of speakers. I'm going to be there. I'm really looking forward to it. He's got Andrew Sanchez, who's the CEO of Udio. He's got Tatiana Cirasano, our friend from Media Research. He's got Oliver Schusser. He's a VP at Apple Music. Andrea Gleason, CEO of TuneCore. And get this, Elliot Grange, the new CEO of Atlantic, is going to be there. And this has been moved to the Sunset Room. So this is the Trapital Summit. If you can go, it's going to be a good one.
And that's a cool place, actually. The Sunset Room is very cool. You can attend the summit for intimate one-on-one fireside chats to discuss their big ideas for the future. Join us in Los Angeles for a day full of inspiring conversations. Again, that's this Wednesday, September 10th, 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. You can go over to the Your Morning Coffee newsletter and check out the full agenda.
Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to that. We have a couple of podcasts that are coming out. One, you and I interviewed David Israelite, who, of course, is the president of the NMPA. That's the National Music Publishers Association. And we've gotten a lot of response from this one. It is really a great interview. So if you haven't caught that, it's a special bonus episode and it's available in your feed.
Indeed, and we sat down with David to talk about the work that's being done to make sure songwriters are fairly paid for their work and the challenges they face today. Important issues like AI training, social media, and short-form video use. David takes complex issues and breaks them down so they can be easily understood, and he is really good at that.
Yeah, that was a really great conversation. I hope we can do another one with him. By the way, for maybe our book club, I'm reading Peter Wolf's book, Waiting on the Moon. It is really, really good. And in a week or so, Glenn Peoples and I are interviewing Peter Wolf to talk about his career and this book. It should be really good. A couple of other quick things. We just finished an interview with Brent Smith from Shinedown.
That'll be
and,
good.
you know, once in a while, these interviews, you forget you're recording and you're just having a conversation. And Brent is just such a great guy and so hardworking and just a real guy. Anyway, coming soon, check out Brent Smith from Shinedown, that episode. And then I'll let you know when the Peter Wolf episode is dropping. And then the last one I wanted to mention really quickly is this conversation we had with Otto, A-D-O, Otto. And Otto is a Japanese singer. May not be a household name in the U.S., but it is in Western countries, but in other countries, especially Japan. But she's 22 years old, and she has enough fans, even in the United States, to play arenas here in Europe and in Latin America. And she was an absolute joy to talk to.
Well, yeah, and you and Glenn got to speak with Otto through an interpreter and to find out about her beginnings as a fan of Vocaloid music, how she developed her amazing voice, and what she saw when performing inside a backlit cube-shaped cage on her recent Hibanaut World Tour.
Yeah, super cool stuff. A couple of other little streaming milestones this week. There were a couple of stories. One was from Mandy DeLugdug over at Music Business Worldwide. The headline was The Weeknd's Blinding Lights becomes the first song to hit 5 billion streams on Spotify. So The Weeknd's synth pop hit, Blinding Lights, that shattered yet another record, becoming the first song in Spotify history to cross 5 billion streams.
Wow. Blinding Lights is the second single from The Weeknd's fourth studio album, After Hours. Following its November 2019 release, the track dominated the Billboard Hot 100 chart for 4 straight weeks. It was the first song to stay in the chart's top 10 for an entire year.
Yeah. Swedish musicians, Max Martin, who we've talked about, Oscar Holter, they co-produced that song alongside The Weeknd, and Canadian musicians Belly and Dahila. The other sort of milestone this week we wanted to bring up was also from Mandy DeLugdug at Music Business Worldwide. She's been really busy the last couple of weeks. Sabrina Carpenter's Man's Best Friend, that breaks a Spotify record for most streamed album in a single day by a female artist in 2025.
Right. Sabrina Carpenter's 7th studio album. And by the way, I can't believe she's got 7 studio albums. Like, really? That went fast. Which is entitled Man's Best Friend, has broken the record for the most streamed album on Spotify in a single day by a female artist this year. The achievement was announced by Spotify on its social media pages this last Tuesday.
Yeah, there was a really cool story this week from Daniel Tenser over at Music Business Worldwide with the headline Bandcamp launches human-created Bandcamp clubs at $13 a month. Direct-to-fan platform Bandcamp has launched a new subscription service that gives users access to monthly record selections, listening parties, recommendations, and exclusive artist content.
So one of its key selling points is no algorithms. All the music featured in each of the clubs is curated by a respected tastemaker in the music business.
Right. The Bandcamp clubs, it's easy for you to say, feature launched on Tuesday, and it's a $13 a month subscription fee that includes subscribe to own music discovery. And that features albums that become a permanent part of a Bandcamp user's music library.
So Bandcamp general manager Dan Melnick said instead of algorithms, fans get human curated picks from some of the best DJs and journalists in their respective areas, exclusive interviews with artists, and community listening parties. You can check out our recent, by the way, special episode, which is a conversation with Dan Melnick, which was pretty
super
cool,
interesting,
if I may say so.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Another little piece that came up, again, from Mandy DeLugdug over at Music Business Worldwide. The headline was JYP Entertainment is hiring for AI and Unreal Engine experts to develop an unprecedented virtual K-pop artist. I thought this was really interesting. JYP, currently riding high on the success of Stray Kids, they're hiring a staff with expertise in AI, motion graphics, Unreal Engine, and more as it prepares to develop, quote unquote, unprecedented AI artists through its tech business unit, which is called Blue Garage.
Yeah, so job ads listed on the company's website indicate that JYP is recruiting for multiple roles for its AI artist project, from creative production and product design execs to LLM engineers. It's starting to feel like when I was in the video games business. This is all these things that skills that you needed for that business, and here we are talking about it in the world of AI.
Yeah, and it's sort of a precursor. You see these jobs being advertised, and then you see, are we going to see a K-pop artist that is generated by AI? This company is also hiring for positions like 3D art director, character interaction engineer, interesting, and character modeler, all of which, according to the ads, require an understanding of Unreal Engine, the powerful gaming engine and 3D creation tool that was developed by Epic Games and the gaming giant. They're the ones behind Fortnite.
Indeed. Another story by Mandy DeLugdug over at Music Business Worldwide. Vinyl records and CDs spared from new U.S. import tariffs. So U.S. Customs and Border Protection, that's the CBP, confirmed that physical music formats like vinyl records, CDs, and cassettes are exempt from new tariffs that took effect this last Friday or 2 Fridays ago because they are classified as information materials, which are exempt from trade restrictions.
Well, that's good news. The exemption protects record collectors and music retailers from tariffs now applied to about 1.4 billion shipments of previously duty-free packages that enter the U.S. every single year. Super interesting.
Yeah, indeed. Well, hey, before we get going on some stories, Jay, what do you say we thank our sponsors?
Yeah, we couldn't do it without them. We'd like to thank Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It's edited daily by our friend Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Indeed, Bands in Town. Over 90 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It is the #1 artist service platform connecting over 650,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms. And every week I get to hang out with the Silver-Tongued Devil himself and a big Minnesota Vikings fan, which he is looking forward to the first game Monday night, I believe it is. He is Jay Gilbert, music industry consultant, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Group. Scrappy little companies.
Yes, sir. And, we've been through 4 Super Bowl losses, so you can't scare me. I get to do this show every week, and even once in a while we meet for lunch. Mr. Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group.
Yes, indeed. All right. Our regular listeners know that Jay and I are big fans of Chris Castle and his music technology policy blog. Last week, he posted the following op-ed, which was the lead story in the Your Morning Coffee newsletter, which is Spotify's updated terms of use. Your data is their new oil.
Yeah, it was such a great piece that I reached out to Chris, and he was kind enough to record it for us because you got to hear it in his voice. And he did this for our listeners, and we really appreciate Chris. So let's listen in. This is Chris Castle talking about his piece, Spotify's updated terms of use. Your data is their new oil.
Today, we're going to have a responsive reading of a post I did on musictechpolicy.com called AI Implications of Spotify's Updated Terms of Use. And as we like to say, your data is their new oil. So what prompted this was a email that Spotify sent out to all of its users, apparently, as far as I can tell. And it was one of those emails that talked about changing their privacy policy, terms of use, developer policy, this kind of thing. And when you get one of these, it'll have these kind of innocuous things like, hey, we did X. Don't worry about it. Of course, that's exactly when you should start worrying about it. And the usual summary that's in one of these emails is never the same as what they've actually done. So we drilled down on all the changes they actually made and came up with a list. So that's what this post is about. So Spotify When they did this, they failed to consult any of the people who drive fans to the data abattoir, which is another word for slaughterhouse. I take a dim view of this, in case you haven't noticed. So the musicians, artists, and podcasters and authors who drive fans to Spotify were not consulted about this at all. And it's those fans that are going to be picked over in the data scraping. So just keep that in mind. It would have been nice if somebody asked or at least gave a heads up, but they never seem to do that. So the Post. Spotify has quietly tightened the screws on AI this summer, while simultaneously clarifying how it uses your data to power its own machine learning features. For artists, rights holders, developers, and policy folks, the combination matters. Spotify is making it harder for outsiders to train models on Spotify data, even as it codifies its own first-party uses like AI DJ and personalized playlists. Spotify is drawing a bright line. No to training models on Spotify, yes to Spotify training its own models. If you're an artist or developer, that means stronger contractual leverage against third-party scrapers on Spotify's part, but also a need to sharpen your own data governance and licensing posture. Expect other platforms in music and podcasting and probably movies too to follow suit, and for regulators to ask tough questions about how platform machine learning features are audited, licensed, and accounted for. Maybe. Below is a plain English, hopefully, breakdown of what changed with the new policies and what's new or newly explicit, emphasis on newly explicit, and the practical implications for different stakeholders. So first, there's an explicit ban on using Spotify to train AI models by third parties. Spotify's user guidelines now flatly prohibit crawling or scraping the service, and crucially using any part of the services or content to train a machine learning or AI model. That's a categorical no for bots and bulk data slurps. The developer policy mirrors this. Apps using the web API may not use the Spotify platform or any Spotify content to train a machine learning or AI model. In short, if your product ingests Spotify data, you're in violation of the rules and risk some sort of enforcement action or access revocation, which is probably more likely. Spotify's own AI and machine learning uses are clearer and broad. The privacy policy, effective August 27th, 2025, spells out that Spotify uses personal data to, quote, develop and train, close quote, algorithmic and machine learning models to improve recommendations, build AI features like AI DJ and AI playlists, and enforce rules. That legal basis is framed largely as Spotify's, quote, legitimate interests, close quote. Translation, your usage, voice, and other data can feed Spotify's own models. So get that straight. The user content license is very broad. If you post, quote, user content, close quote, which would include likely messages, playlist titles, descriptions, images, comments, etc., including probably your voice, to the extent you use any voice prompts. You grant Spotify a worldwide, sub-licensable, transferable, royalty-free, irrevocable license to reproduce, modify, create derivative works from, distribute, perform, and display that content in any medium. That's standard platform drafting these days, but the scope, including derivative works, has AI era consequences for anything you upload or create within Spotify's ecosystem. For example, playlist titles, cover images, and comments. Next, anti-manipulation and anti-automation rules are baked in. The user guidelines and developer policy double down on bans against bots, artificial streaming, and traffic manipulation. If you're building tools that touch the Spotify graph, treat, quote, no automated collection, no metric gaming, no derived profiling as table stakes, or risk enforcement up to termination of access. Next point, data sharing signals to rights holders continue. Spotify says it can provide pseudonymized listening data to rights holders under existing deals. That's not new, but in the machine learning context, it underscores why parallel data flows to third parties are tightly controlled. Spotify wants to be the gateway for data, not the faucet you can plumb yourself. Next, what this means by role. So let's just sort of summarize what those rule changes mean, depending on who you are. So for artists and labels, the AI training ban gives you a clear contractual hook against services that scrape Spotify to build recommenders, clones, or vocal style models. Document violations, timestamps, IP, payloads, and send notices citing the user guidelines and developer policy. Meanwhile, assume your own usage and voice interactions can be used to improve Spotify's models, something to consider for privacy reviews and internal policies. Next, if you're a publisher or a collecting society, the combination of, quote, no third-party training plus first-party machine learning training, in other words, they can stop someone else from training, but they can train, is a trend to watch across platforms. Other people are going to start doing this to the extent they haven't already, and I would imagine Spotify is something of a follower on this as well. So likely it's already happening. It raises familiar questions about derivative data, model outputs, and whether platform machine learning features create new accounting categories or require new audit rights in future licenses. For policymakers, read this as another brick in the closed data open model risk wall. Platforms restrict external extraction while expanding internal model claims. That asymmetry will shape future debates over data access mandates, competition remedies, and model audit rights, especially where platform machine learning features may substitute for third-party discovery tools. So practical to-dos in response to this. For rights owners, you may consider adding explicit no platform source training language in your vendor, distributor, or analytics contracts. Of course, it takes two to tango. So, if Spotify just rejects that, what are you going to do? Track and log known scrapers and third-party tools that might be training off Spotify. Consider notice letters that cite these specific clauses. Privacy and legal teams, update your DPIAs and data maps. Spotify's privacy policy identifies user data, usage data, voice data, message data, and as more inputs for machine learning features under legitimate so-called interest. If you rely on Spotify data for compliance reports, make sure you're only using permitted, properly aggregated outputs and not raw exports. So for users, I will be posting a guideline to how to claw back your data. I haven't done it yet, but I will. I may not hit everything, so always open to suggestion about whatever else that others might spot. So Spotify's terms give it very broad rights to collect, combine, and use your data, listening history, device ads, data, voice features, third-party signals, all of it, for personalization, ads, and product R&D. They also take a broad license to user content that you upload, such as playlist art. So keep that in mind. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Wow. So, and now back to your regularly scheduled programming indeed. Thank you again, Chris Castle. And again, that's music tech. It's musictechpolicy.com. The site is Music Technology Policy, but it's musictechpolicy.com. It's one of our favorite resources, and it's always insightful. I always learn something every time I go there.
For sure. So coming September 18th, you don't want to miss this free roundtable, which is hosted by Chris. It's entitled the Artist Rights Roundtable on AI and Copyright, Coffee with Humans and the Machines. Join the Artist Rights Institute, that's the ARI, and Kogod's Entertainment Business Program for a timely morning roundtable on AI and copyright from the artist's perspective. They'll explore how emerging artificial intelligence technologies challenge authorship, licensing, and the creative economy, and what courts, lawmakers, and creators are doing in response.
Right. So that's coming up September 18th. I'll be there. Don't miss it. It starts at 8 a.m. Eastern time, and it's at American University in Washington, D.C. It's, like you said, it's called Coffee with Humans, and, you had me at coffee.
That's right. Well, and the admission is free and open to the public, so registration is required over at Eventbrite. Seating is limited, so you can go to, again, musictechpolicy.com for details.
Yeah, this should be really good. Before we jump into our bigger stories this week, another one that popped up that I thought was really interesting was written by Murray Stassen over at Music Business Worldwide, and the headline was Downtown Music Boss Speaks Out on UMG Deal. This has been a hot topic lately. He says that the debate must be honest. It must be about facts. not agendas. So Downtown Music CEO Peter Van Ryn has penned an open letter commenting on Universal Music Group's proposed acquisition of his company, Downtown.
Right. So in the letter, Van Ryn addresses what he calls whispering campaigns of misinformation that we have seen pervade the public debate about the deal, which is currently under Phase 2 investigation by the European Commission.
Yeah, UMG's Virgin Music Group revealed in December that it had agreed to buy Downtown Music Holdings, LLC, in a $775 million deal. The commission announced in April that it was preparing to investigate the proposed acquisition and confirmed in July that it had opened up an in-depth inquiry following an initial Phase 1 investigation.
Yep. In his letter, Van Ryn argues that certain corners of the independent industry, most notably some of the very bodies entrusted to guide it, chose to overlook the clear benefits for their members that this merger offers. He adds, as members of these industry bodies ourselves, we respect their position and mission, but the debate must be honest. It must be about facts, not agendas.
Yeah, this Downtown chief, Van Ryn, who was named CEO in 2024 after leading the subsidiary Fuga since 2014, he explained that Downtown had been approached by multiple companies interested in acquiring us, he said, but that none truly aligned with or empowered the mission that has always driven us forward as Virgin Music Group did.
Right. So Van Ryn writes that for the first time, we were presented with a partner who wanted to invest in Downtown, our team and our clients. He said, for Virgin, it was about building on our offering, not just synergizing it with their own.
Yeah, I like that word, synergizing. Elsewhere in the letter, Van Ryn emphasizes that the independent industry is a very broad and very global community, and he argued that it's impossible to speak on behalf of it in its entirety. And while defending Downtown's track record of fighting as hard as we have always done for the continuing trust of our clients that they've placed in us.
So Van Ryn also addresses head-on the data concerns that have formed part of the debate about the proposed deal, insisting that Downtown clients can expect the same, if not expanded, industry-leading data protection and security they used to now. You can read Peter Van Ryn's full letter in the article by Murray Stassen and Music Business Worldwide in the Your Morning Coffee newsletter.
Yes, sir. And our final story this week is by Elizabeth Diltz Marshall over at Billboard. And the headline is, Music Industry Must Work with AI Companies Rather Than Fight Them in Court. And this is a piece about Charles Goldstuck. You know, it's a new paper that he wrote. And he's an industry veteran. And he writes that music and AI companies would be wise to get ahead of the courts and lawmakers to create new licensing agreements.
Right. AI music is forcing a high-stakes inflection point and presenting the greatest disruption to the legal underpinnings of the music industry's economic model since Napster. But a revenue-having overhaul and protracted unpopular legal battles can be avoided if major music companies get out ahead of judges and lawmakers and negotiate with Suno, Udio, and Anthropic, says industry veteran and investor Charles Goldstuck.
Yeah, I think it's smart. In a new paper that he wrote for Wake Forest University Journal for Business and Intellectual Property Law, Goldstuck, he's a former executive, BMG, Hitco, Arista, and Capital, and the architect behind the turnaround for digital jukebox company TouchTunes. He writes that music companies don't need to reinvent the wheel. He argued that licensing agreements with generative AI platforms are likely to closely mirror current licensing agreements with digital streaming platforms.
Right. He went on to write, negotiated settlement should become the primary engine of progress, not the compromise of last resort. He, of course, currently runs the music rights investment firm Gold State Music. He went on to say if rights holders and technologists embrace this before judicial rulings codify blunt positions, they can architect a licensing ecosystem that secures creative labor, fuels responsible AI research, ensuring that the music economy evolves on solid legal and innovative foundations.
Right. So here are some highlights from Goldstuck's white paper, and you can download that and read it in its entirety in this piece from Billboard. He starts off with the issues that can't be resolved in courts, or they shouldn't be. Lawsuits are long, expensive, and bruising, he wrote, citing the $100 million YouTube that they spent on its 7-year legal battle with Viacom and the legal onslaught the music industry waged against piracy that ensnared teenagers and turned public opinion against the enforcement of copyright law. Judicial rulings, well, they often result in inelegant solutions to music's most perplexing rights attribution issues.
Right, he goes on to say, if that weren't enough, music companies can't afford to win legal battles against AI companies. He said the alignment of multiple leading generative AI music platforms with multinational tech conglomerates has provided them with the ability to outspend and outlitigate rights holders, and he's citing AI company investments from Microsoft and Amazon, among others.
Right, Goldstuck goes on to say, artists are no longer passive observers of technology regulation, but are active architects in its ethical and legal constraints. This kind of creative activism, it may prove to be essential in ensuring that the future of the music remains anchored in human authorship.
Right, he talks about lessons can be learned from YouTube and TouchTunes. He says, though the music industry initially took a defensive stance with YouTube, it is now a dominant video streaming platform following a decade of change that included striking licensing agreements with labels and in 2014 settling a protracted legal battle with Viacom, which he argued.
Yeah, he went on to say that by the time Viacom's suit was settled, YouTube's Content ID system had facilitated $1 billion in payments to copyright holders, demonstrating how technological solutions combined with licensing partnerships created sustainable monetization far exceeding what litigation could achieve.
Right. The cost of litigation, pressure from advertisers, and a realization that access to music was critical to its content during a period of rapid expansion proved to be a powerful incentive for YouTube to reach agreements with music industry partners.
Right. Goldstuck went on to say that generative AI platforms can take a lesson from YouTube's early business decisions. These platforms can work proactively to acknowledge rights and accelerate their investment in attribution technologies and work with music stakeholders to create pathways for scalable monetization frameworks to be partners in good standing rather than an adversary.
Right, so Goldstuck continued that stable, clear, and long-established licensing regulations that set reasonable licensing agreement rates were also a prerequisite that informed his experience raising $45 million from investors to grow TouchTunes.
Yeah, and finally, he says, licensing infrastructure was not merely a regulatory compliance requirement, but a fundamental business necessity, enabling investor confidence. He added that the experience suggests that similar regulatory clarity around generative AI licensing could unlock significant capital deployment and innovation in the AI music sector. And I just felt like that was a really common sense approach.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very interesting piece. And, we've been reporting on this so much over the last several episodes in the last couple of years almost now, it seems like. But it does seem like this time things are lining up a little bit differently than they have in past sort of giant issues like this. Whether it be sampling and other things that have kind of the music industry dealt with. So
yeah, and I'm feeling, Mike, that some of these companies, we started reporting on Endel and their collaboration with Universal, and then 11 Labs, with Cobalt, and I just feel like we're learning from our mistakes, and that we're starting to maybe embrace this technology instead of trying to kill it. We'll see.
Yeah, we will see, and we hope for the best. Absolutely. Well, hey, we got to wrap up the show. We certainly appreciate everyone listening, and if you enjoy the show, please just tell one friend. Jay and I would certainly appreciate that. Big thanks to our friends over at Hypebot and Bands in Town for helping us put the show on. Music by the Licorice Quartet. And Donna, we are going to come back again next week. So stick around, because Jay and I certainly love doing this every week. So on behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert, I'm Mike Etchart. And as I said, we will be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.